She was working at Universal, put some of the music in some of the shows. So anyway, so to this point, an unrecognized musician, unlike Lent, who really had his time in the sun as a punk rock god.
On a quiet Sunday morning in Beverly Hills, nothing seemed out of place until it was. A man poured his coffee, said goodbye, walked down the hall, and never came back. Just days earlier, Patrick Muldoon had shared news about a major new project. At 57, his life appeared steady, even promising. And then, without warning, everything changed. So what really happened in those final moments? And why does the story behind Patrick Muldoon's life feel far more complicated than most people realize? Join us as we uncover the tragedy of Patrick Muldoon. The morning that changed everything. The way Patrick Muldoon died is not a story about illness or decline or a life that had run out of road. It is a story about a Sunday morning that was supposed to be ordinary, but turned into something no one around him will ever fully recover from. On the morning of April 19, 2026, Patrick was at his Beverly Hills home with his girlfriend, Miriam Rothbart. They had coffee together, the way people do on Sunday mornings all over the world, and then he went to take a shower. His girlfriend waited, but he did not come back. When enough time had passed that worry overrode patience, she went to check on him and found him on the bathroom floor, unresponsive. She immediately called the paramedics. However, when they arrived, it was a little too late. They tried everything they could, but there was nothing anyone could do. Patrick Muldoon was 57 years old, and just like that, he was gone. The cause of death was a heart attack, sudden and without warning. He had given no indication in any public or private communication that anything was wrong with his health. Just 2 days before he died, on April 17, 2026, he had posted on Instagram about a new film called Cockroach, directed by Matt Ross and starring Chris Hemsworth, Taron Egerton, and Zazie Beetz, in which Patrick was set to serve as executive producer through his production company, Storyboard Productions. The post had the energy of someone genuinely excited about where their life is heading, someone who was actually happy, engaged, and planning a future that was bigger than anything he had previously been part of. His last acting role was in a crime thriller called Dirty Hands, co-starring Denise Richards and Michael Beach. That film was scheduled to be released on April 24, 2026, 5 days after he died. He left this world 5 days before his final film was set to reach the audience it was made for. His sister, Shauna Muldoon Zappa, who is married to Amit Zappa, the son of Frank Zappa, posted on Instagram the day after Patrick died and described a family that woke up the next morning, hoping the day before had been a bad dream. She said they were devastated and just trying to process how someone so happy, healthy, and full of life could be suddenly taken from this earth. She called him the brightest light in every room, in any moment, on any day. She said she believed he was still that light somewhere. His best friend of 36 years, Casper Van Dien, wrote that he had lost the friend with whom he could be the most authentic version of himself, and that he could not believe he was gone. That is the ending. But to understand why this loss carries the specific weight that it does, you need to go all the way back to the beginning, to a kid from San Pedro, California, who was playing tight end for the USC Trojans before he ever stood in front of a camera. A football player who walked into Hollywood. Patrick Muldoon's full name was William Patrick Muldoon III, and he was born on September 27, 1968, in San Pedro, California. His father was a personal injury lawyer of Irish descent. His mother was of Croatian heritage and worked as a homemaker. Both parents had a genuine appreciation for the arts. Painting, writing, and music were all part of the household he grew up in, and those influences got passed directly to Patrick in a way that shaped not just his tastes, but his entire approach to his career. He did not grow up in a family of entertainers. He grew up in a family that cared about creative things, which turned out to be a better foundation. He attended Loyola High School, a Jesuit institution in Los Angeles, and then enrolled at the University of Southern California, where he played tight end for the Trojans football team and came away with 2 Rose Bowl rings. While still at USC and still playing ball, he began modeling for Calvin Klein through the Wilhelmina Agency, which gave him his first professional connection to the entertainment industry before he had a single acting credit. Football gave him physical discipline and presence. Modeling gave him camera confidence. When the early television roles started coming in, those 2 things together made him someone a casting director was going to notice. He appeared in 2 episodes of Who's the Boss during his college years, and then, shortly after graduating in 1991, landed a recurring role on Saved by the Bell as Jeffrey Hunter, the charming character whose arrival famously broke up Zach and Kelly. For anyone who grew up watching that show, his face was already stored somewhere in the back of their memory before he had done anything that would make the entertainment industry take him seriously. He was building recognition before he was building a resume. Every tribute written after his death returned to the same description of what he was like as a person. The brightest light in every room. His girlfriend, his sister, his colleagues, his closest friends, all of them reached for the same image. His nickname among the people who loved him was Bobo. He gave what his friends described as unforgettable hugs. He loved animals and people with the same uncomplicated warmth. He had what his sister called a rock and roll spirit and a generosity that the people around him quietly depended on. A football player with Rose Bowl rings who was already doing Calvin Klein modeling while being part of a hit show's guest cast. That combination of qualities was pointed directly at something much bigger, and the door into that something opened in 1992. Days of Our Lives, and the role that made him a household name. In 1992, Patrick Muldoon was cast as Austin Reed on Days of Our Lives. He was the first actor ever to play the character, which means he was not inheriting a role someone else had built. He was creating it from nothing. Austin Reed was a romantic lead, a genuine good guy in a world of complicated relationships, and Patrick brought a natural charm to the part that connected with the audience from the first episode. Days of Our Lives had been running since 1965 and had an intensely loyal viewership that did not tolerate weak casting in important roles. Landing a significant romantic lead on that show in 1992 meant being watched by millions of people every weekday, in living rooms across the country, in a format that demanded something real from the people on screen, because the audience spent more time with daytime soap characters than they spent with most people in their actual lives. He won the Soap Opera Digest Award for Best New Actor, and the recognition that came with it pushed him into the front line of the most visible faces in daytime television. He appeared in nearly 500 episodes over 3 years. 500 episodes is a number that takes a moment to fully absorb. Years of daily work, of showing up and building a character across hundreds of storylines, relationships, and dramatic turns. By the time his first run ended in 1995, he had a platform, a reputation, and an audience that had genuinely invested in who he was. His co-star Alison Sweeney, who played Sammy Brady on Days of Our Lives and worked alongside him during those early years, wrote after his death that he was brilliantly talented, endlessly kind, and generous in spirit. She said he made her feel at ease right away when she was just starting out, and that he brought his unique charm and humor to work every day. That is not a tribute composed out of courtesy. That is someone who was there, watching him operate, telling you exactly who the person was when the cameras were not rolling. 3 years, nearly 500 episodes, a major award, and a loyal audience. Most actors would have considered that a complete career. But Patrick Muldoon was still in his mid-20s, and he had already done something that had never happened once in the history of one of the most powerful companies in American television. The Spelling Deal and Melrose Place. When his first run on Days of Our Lives ended in 1995, Patrick had already become the first and only actor in the history of Spelling Entertainment to hold an exclusive development deal. Aaron Spelling was one of the most powerful producers in American television. The architect of Dynasty, Beverly Hills 90210, Charlie's Angels, and dozens of other shows that had shaped what primetime looked like for decades. A development deal with Spelling was not a minor recognition. It was a statement by one of the most commercially minded people in the industry that Patrick Muldoon was worth a significant investment of attention and resources. That deal led to Melrose Place, Spelling's primetime soap that was one of the most watched programs in America through the mid-1990s. Patrick joined the show in its 3rd season and played Richard Hart for 3 seasons, and Richard Hart was the villain. That choice was smart and deliberate. Going from the romantic lead on a daytime soap to the villain on a primetime soap demonstrated range in the clearest way possible. It showed that the man audiences had trusted as the good guy on Days of Our Lives could also be threatening, manipulative, and genuinely menacing in a different register. He played it with committed energy all the way through to his character's dramatic death in Season 5, which, in primetime soap terms, is as satisfying an exit as a villain gets. By the mid-1990s, Patrick had been on 3 of the most watched shows of the era, had won a major industry award, had the backing of the most powerful producer in television, and was still in his late 20s. He was about to walk into one of the most enduring cult films of the decade and play a character that people are still quoting nearly 30 years later. Starship Troopers, and the scene nobody ever forgets. Starship Troopers came out in 1997, directed by Paul Verhoeven, the Dutch filmmaker who had already made RoboCop and Basic Instinct. Patrick played Xander Barkalow, the cocky rival pilot who openly pursues Carmen Ibanez while she is still connected to protagonist Johnny Rico, played by Casper Van Dien. The love triangle between the 3 characters gave the film its emotional undercurrent, and Patrick played Xander with the kind of easy, confident swagger that made him both irritating and watchable at the same time, which is precisely what a rival in that kind of story needs to be. The film was not a straightforward hit on release. Critics argued over whether it was genuine military satire or simply a big, dumb action movie. In the years that followed, the critical conversation shifted significantly, and Starship Troopers is now widely recognized as sharp, intentionally absurd satire that was considerably smarter than most people initially gave it credit for. The cult following it built has only grown with time, and Patrick is a central part of why. His final scene, in which Xander faces the brain bug and shouts a defiant line before being killed, became one of the most quoted and referenced moments in the film. Pure Patrick. Committed, energetic, and impossible to forget. Casper Van Dien, who played his main rival on screen and became his closest friend in real life, described their friendship after Patrick's death as lasting 36 years. He wrote, "I've lost the friend I could be the most authentic version of myself with. Over 36 years of friendship. Can't believe you're gone. R.I.P., brother." The language he used is not the language people reach for when they are describing a colleague they liked. It is the language of losing someone who was essential to how they existed in the world. Starship Troopers secured Patrick's cult status and gave him a friendship that lasted more than 3 decades. What most people do not know is that in the years after the film, he built a second career that had almost nothing to do with acting. The producer, the musician, and a life that kept expanding. After Starship Troopers, Patrick kept acting steadily through the late 1990s and 2000s, appearing in independent films, Lifetime and Hallmark productions, and making serious stage work. He played Edmund in a 2006 production of King Lear, directed by Patsy Rodenberg, demonstrating a classical ambition that went well beyond anything his daytime soap fan base might have anticipated. In 2011, he returned to Days of Our Lives for a second run as Austin Reed, staying with the character until 2012. The audience welcomed him back as if no time had passed, but the dimension of his later career that most people did not fully register was his work as a producer. Through storyboard productions, Patrick built a genuine body of independent film credits behind the camera. He produced The Tribes of Palos Verdes. He produced Arkansas, starring Vince Vaughn, John Malkovich, and Liam Hemsworth. He produced The Card Counter, directed by Paul Schrader. He produced Marlowe, directed by Neil Jordan and starring Liam Neeson. These are not vanity projects attached to a famous face. These are serious independent films made by serious filmmakers. And the fact that Patrick was the person finding the money and building the infrastructure around them says something important about where he had arrived. He was not coasting on his 1990s recognition. He was actively building something new. And then there was the music. He was the lead singer and guitarist of a blues rock band called the Sleeping Masses, which he poured genuine creative energy into alongside everything else he was doing. He had studied acting under the highly regarded coach Larry Moss. He had artistic parents who had shaped him from childhood. Music was never a casual side project. It was another creative space he fully occupied. The description of him as having a full-tilt, rock and roll spirit in the statement his friends released after his death was not a metaphor. It was a biography. 2 days before he died, he posted about Cockroach with the excitement of someone who had finally arrived at the version of his career he had been building toward for 30 years. That post is now one of the hardest things to read. What he left behind and why it matters. Patrick Muldoon's career spans nearly 100 acting credits and more than a dozen producing credits. He worked across daytime television, primetime television, independent film, genre film, theater, music, and production. He won a major industry award in his early 20s and never treated it as a dead end. He kept evolving. He moved from romantic lead to villain to serious independent producer without losing the enthusiasm that made people want to work with him in the first place. That is genuinely rare across 30 years in any industry. The Starship Troopers cult following alone would have been enough to secure his place in the memories of people who grew up in the 1990s. He embraced that cult status with warmth rather than embarrassment, which is the mark of someone who understood what it meant to have been part of something that still mattered to people a generation later. He was planning a Starship Troopers panel at LA Comic-Con, alongside Denise Richards as recently as this year. But the people who knew Patrick Muldoon, the man who knew him, are mourning not primarily the man who played Xander Barkalow, Austin Reed, or Richard Hart. He is the man with the nickname Bobo. The man who gave unforgettable hugs. The man whose girlfriend found him on the bathroom floor after coffee on a Sunday morning. The man whose sister said the family woke up the next day hoping it had been a bad dream. The man whose best friend of 36 years said he was the only person with whom he could be completely and honestly himself. Those are not the words people use to describe a famous person. They are the words people use to describe someone they genuinely loved, genuinely needed, and genuinely cannot imagine life without. That is who Patrick Muldoon was. And that is what the world lost on April 19th, 2026. What do you think his legacy in Hollywood should be remembered as? The actor, the producer, or something else entirely? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.